Jobs just vanished from the payroll, leaving more working class to rely on record credit card interest to pay for the must-haves. Rent, utilities, and groceries keep climbing while wages stall. And tariffs aren't just boardroom talk. They're showing up now at nearly every purchase. This is Roughly Speaking. No politics drenched in spin, just how economics hit your wallet. Let's get into it. The Federal Reserve's July policy minutes just dropped, and the heat below the surface is getting dangerous. First, some context. At that July meeting, two Fed governors, Michelle Bowman and Christopher Waller, voted against holding rates steady. Instead, they argued for a 25 basis point cut, citing a weakening job market. It was the first time since 1993 we saw a dual dissent in favor of rate cuts. That alone is enough to make economists sweat. But let's talk jobs. July's headline job growth, a week 73,000, well under the 105,000 expected. But that's just what we see on the surface. The iceberg actually lurks beneath. May's figures were revised down by 125,000, and June lost 133,000 jobs. That's a staggering 258,000 jobs revised off of the map with no warning. But it's not a conspiracy. Bureau of Labor Statistics jobs revisions are common. But 258,000 is the largest two-month revision in years outside of the pandemic collapse. The unemployment rate ticked up to 4.2%, and labor force participation is down, suggesting that more people are ditching job searches and not turning up for roles. If you've had to search for a job recently, you know why that is. I was last applying about 3 years ago. Applied for over 70 positions, heard back from less than a handful. Online job applications have added many more layers to the process, leading many folks just to give up in frustration. Meanwhile, the markets have responded. The CME FedWatch tool pegs an 85% chance of a rate cut in September, and Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee teed up cautious optimism, but warned if tariffs aren't transitory and labor doesn't rebound, inflation may stay stubborn. The story gets political now. President Trump immediately fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, calling the numbers rigged. Former Bridgewater titan Ray Dalio unloaded, calling it a dangerous interference with data integrity. So we are seeing rising inflation and stagnant economic growth alongside rising unemployment. These are the ingredients to the economic equivalent of a perfect storm, stagflation. If you want to know more about that, subscribe to Rough Cut Media Network to catch our Red Economics series, Sticker Shock Therapy, which is all about inflation, the upcoming stagflation, and much, much more. But here's why all of this matters to you, and fast. Every Fed move nudges your life. A delayed rate cut means your rent, your car loan, and your credit card interest rates will remain high. However, a rate cut too early could lead to runaway inflation, which will make every other purchase in your life significantly more expensive. Job revisions that vanish hundreds of thousands of positions, they don't just look bad on paper. They mean someone in your neighborhood most likely lost their job. And when the labor market is fooled into looking stronger than it is, policy stays tight, and that's a cost you feel with every bill, every grocery tab, and every paycheck stretch. Personally, I think they need to stay put. Yes, interest rates will remain high, but with inflation steadily rising, steady for now that is, a cut would lead to a sudden influx of spending, and sudden spending leads to, you guessed it, even higher inflation. On top of that, consider the housing market, which we're going to talk about next. If rates suddenly drop, those holding massive amounts of cash will swoop back into the already troubled housing market and start buying up every available and unavailable house that's out there. That means the working class are left out of ownership and are stuck with the whims of the wealthy. When the administration pressures an independent financial body of the government to pretend their policies are actually working, that ends up directly affecting the financial independence of us, the working class. Let's open the rent vortex and step into the real cost of shelter. In July, the U.S. Consumer Price Index, or CPI, reported that rent is still inflating. Shelter costs alone comprise 40% of the core inflation, and it keeps going up. Some mobile home parks are seeing lot rent increases multiple times a year. Roll tape.
Rent increases at mobile home parks. CBS 13 has learned of at least 8 mobile home parks in Maine, raising monthly rents by $75 or more.
Tenants of Blue Haven Mobile Home Park in Saco just got their notices. As CBS 13's Brad Rogers shows us, the new rent hike is about 5 times higher than normal.
Mobile home park owners across the state are raising rents after new state laws were enacted aimed at protecting tenants. Blue Haven in Saco is the latest park where rents are being raised.
This would be the second increase this year.
Yeah.
Barb Thomas and Barbara Scorse are on disability, and like many Blue Haven mobile homeowners, they're on fixed incomes.
We know 70-plus-year-old people in this park that from the last raise we had this year had to go out and get part-time jobs to try to afford to stay in here. Yeah. And now they're raising it another $145 or more. That's going to be very hard for some older people.
Rodney Champagne was looking for part-time work when he got the rent increase notice.
Because things had been so tight. And I thought, okay, this is going to give me breathing room. And then I get that letter, but you get to a point where you just can't cut back anymore.
Monthly lot rents will go up to at least $660. Some pay more than that.
$660. That's $666 a month just for land on a lot that's usually only slightly bigger than the mobile home itself. And utility prices? They're burning holes in our pockets too. Electricity costs are up 5.5% year over year. Natural gas is surging at 13.8%. And gasoline, even with prices dipping, still chews a hole through our commute budget. Behind the numbers is a hard truth. Even as building permits, housing starts, and builder sentiment plummets, prices keep rising. That means supply is shrinking and demand stays unsatisfied. Markets haven't cooled. They're starting to suffocate. So let's get granular in a few key metro areas. Austin, Texas, rents have leapt 12% in the past year while household income hasn't budged. Nashville renters now pay 41% of their income on housing, and that's before utilities and repairs. And nationally, the housing wage, the income required to afford a 2-bedroom home at housing cost averages, now stands at $33.63 an hour. But the average renter in a service job only makes about $15 to $18 per hour. Even post-pandemic moves don't save us. People relocating for affordability find that rent jumps follow, often higher than before and pushing locals into squalor. The suburban exodus costs more now, as the housing squeeze spreads from urban centers outwards. This isn't a housing glitch. It's infrastructure failing to meet demand and policy failing to catch up. Affordable housing programs are shrinking as funding is now at 2015 levels. Shelter isn't just a line item. It's the foundation of everything. When rent climbs, healthcare becomes unaffordable, reliable transportation becomes a luxury, and we all know that missing work is the beginning of financial ruin. Emergency savings vanish, and people find roommates, move far from work, or walk away from communities they built. Housing isn't optional. It's a human right. But when the market acts like a toll booth on your wallet, you're paying in ways you're not supposed to, even if your paycheck hasn't moved. All right, so let's go deeper on tariffs, not as an abstract spreadsheet line, but a line item in your real budget. The Yale Budget Lab estimates the average household will shell out an extra $2,400 this year directly because of tariffs. That jumps to $3,400 if Trump's full Liberation Day tariff plan proceeds. And lower-income households absorb most of the pain. These tariffs aren't abstract. They escalate real costs. Clothing prices have jumped 39%. Food is up 3.2%. And we're seeing spikes in building materials, electronics, and even appliances. Have you tried to buy beef lately? I went into our local grocery store this week for a couple celebratory ribeyes. The 2-pack is now over $42. This is largely due to the now 50% tariff on Brazil, where we get a ton of our imported beef. We personally settled for a couple pork shoulder steaks that were under $4 each, and let me tell you, they were bomb. But here's how it bleeds into your everyday life. Yeah, I'm guessing a lot of you can't afford steak either. But say you just bought a new rug, presumably to tie the room together. Well, a tariff-boosted price on that means you could be paying double. And Home Depot is rash with price hikes on imported materials. Even basic plywood or roofing tar continue to increase. Tariffs cause chain reactions beyond the shelf price. They spike component costs, especially for imported parts, electronics, cars, furniture, driving up even made in America items. Cost per component rises 10 to 30%, which adds up to higher final costs at every single turn. And catalog the politics. The Liberation Day tariffs launched a sweeping 10% baseline tariff and then slapped 11 to 50% on top of that, depending on the country. Tariffs now hit over 400 specific goods, and the average U.S. tariff rate soared from 2.5% to nearly 27%, the highest since the 1930s. And the 30s aren't exactly known for being a boon for the working class, am I right? Look, tariffs aren't about protecting domestic jobs. They're a stealth inflation tax on nearly every dollar we blue-collar folks earn. When essentials cost more, discretionary spending vaporizes, healthcare gets postponed, education slides, and food shifts from nutritious to cheap and processed. Tariffs rob your dollar's value inch by inch until suddenly that flat screen, that cell phone, or even a light bulb is completely out of reach. That's not trade policy. It's economic attrition, and you're paying under the guise of patriotism. Okay, from Wall Street's whispers to your grocery bill, every headline we hit today traces back to one thing: who's getting squeezed and who's getting paid. Whether it's the Fed's quiet panic, skyrocketing rent, or tariffs jacking up your everyday expenses, working people are carrying the weight while the suits cash in. And that's why we do this show. Because if you don't follow the money, you get left holding the bill. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. And if you'd like, share this episode with someone you think is feeling the pinch right now. Your rent-burdened cousin, your buddy fighting for hours, or your mom that just happens to be paying triple now for groceries. I'm Lee Calvin, and this is Roughly Speaking right here on the Rough Cut Media Network. More boots, less suits. We'll see you next time.